Good evening, afternoon, or morning, wherever you are watching this webinar. I'm Dr. Yannis Ionissiotis from the National Rehabilitation Center in Athens, Greece, and chair of the Climate and Health Special Interest Group of ISKOS. I'm very pleased to welcome you on this webinar on spinal cord and the climate crisis, from impact to actions. In this webinar, we will cover a wide range of topics related to climate health in spinal cord injury. And the purpose is to increase awareness for people with lived experience of spinal cord injury regarding climate and health, and to provide information to healthcare professionals how to educate their patients. And we need the interaction of the participants to express their feelings about climate change and about sharing their actions. I'm here with members of the government panel of the special interest group. I would like to present you in order of appearance. So I have Professor Markali Alexander. Please, Markali. Markali Alexander is a physical medicine rehabilitation professor in a rehabilitation hospital in the USA. She changed recently her affiliation, and I need to see. It's at the Marcus Neuroscience Institute, medical director of the Cornell Institute for Rehabilitation Medicine. Then we have Ingeborg Irgens, a PRM physician from Norway. She is associate professor on the Faculty of Health Science, Department of Nursing, with Specialized University in Norway. Then our member Carla Silva, which is a pharmacist from the UK, Southport Hospital, Mercy and West Lancashire Teaching Hospitals. And finally, we have our Professor Taslim Uddin from Bangabandhu Sheikh Muyu Medical University in Bangladesh. So I will start immediately with an introductory presentation, and then Markali will follow. So can you please see my slide? Please inform me if you can see the slide.
Yes.
Thank you. So climate change and spinal cord injury are two distinct topics, but they can have interconnected implications. People with lived experience of spinal cord injury are one of the most vulnerable groups to these events. Although healthcare professionals have an opportunity to educate their patients about actions they can use to protect themselves during these extreme weather events, many feel unprepared to discuss the topic. What is climate change? Climate change refers to long-term alterations in Earth's weather patterns and average temperatures caused by human activities. It involves the gradual increase in the planet's temperature due to the buildup of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. These gases trap heat from the sun, leading to a range of effects like rising sea levels, more frequent and intense extreme weather events, altered precipitation patterns, and shifts in ecosystems. Among other things, extreme weather becomes more frequent and intense. There are deeper and longer-lasting droughts. Wildfires spread faster and wider. Glaciers and sea ice gradually melt. Oceans rise. And some areas have more intense cold snaps. These are pictures from my country, from my region, Attica, in Mandra, flash flood event, which turned urban roads into fast-flowing rivers. It caused many fatalities. As you can see, 23 people died. And this is a big wildfire, recent also in Greece, in my region, Attica. Also, 104 people died in this wildfire. And recently in Pedeli, in the same region, one people was dead, and Greece experienced its hottest June and July at that time. So, excuse me. This figure provides 10-year estimates of fatalities related to extreme events from 2004 to 2013, as well as estimated economic damages from 58 weather and climate disaster events with losses exceeding $1 billion in US dollars. These statistics are indicative of the human and economic cost of extreme weather events over this time period, and climate change will alter the frequency, intensity, and geographic distribution of some of these extremes, which has consequences for exposures to health risks from extreme events. Trends and future projections for some extremes, including tornadoes, lightning, and wind storms, are still uncertain. In fact, the United Nations Human Rights Council passed a resolution on climate change and the rights of individuals with disabilities in July 2019. The resolution acknowledged that individuals with disabilities are among those most negatively impacted during emergencies, experiencing excessively high rates of morbidity and mortality, while also being among those least able to receive emergency assistance. How climate change and SCI relate to each other? First, with the extreme weather events. Other evidence shows that extreme weather events can cause spinal cord injuries, primarily indirectly, by amplifying classic trauma mechanisms like falls, motor vehicle crashes, structural collapse, and water-related impacts. Natural disaster reviews confirm that SCI occur in disaster settings, but high-quality, event-specific data for hurricanes, flood storms, wildfires, and snow ice events are remarkably limited and often overshadowed by earthquake data. And this is a nice review recently published from some people, some scientists regarding affected by climate change and extreme weather, with key findings, many important key findings, and I advise you to go and read this review because it has very important information. This is another publication from Shapiro and colleagues regarding extreme storms, and the authors concluded that patients in high-rise buildings may become trapped if elevators do not work, for example. Propelling wheelchairs through storm debris or flood wear is physically difficult and risky, and personnel working in medical shelters are unfamiliar with the care demands of this population. Physician offices and outpatient therapy facilities may be closed for several weeks, disrupting both usual SCI care and treatment for storm-related medical conditions. Second, the healthcare infrastructure. Climate change can strain healthcare systems and infrastructure, making it more challenging for individuals with spinal cord injuries to receive appropriate and timely care. Extreme weather events can disrupt medical facilities, limit access to healthcare services, and exacerbate resource shortages, affecting the availability of necessary treatments and rehabilitation for spinal cord injury patients. The access to mobility and adaptive devices. Climate change impacts can also indirectly affect individuals with SCI by influencing the availability and accessibility of mobility and adaptive devices. For example, rising temperatures can make it more difficult for people with mobility impairments to navigate urban environments if infrastructure lacks proper accessibility features or if extreme heat poses health risks. And finally, psychological impact. Both climate change and spinal cord injuries can have psychological consequences. Climate change-related events and disasters can lead to mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression. Similarly, individuals who have experienced a spinal cord injury may face psychological challenges due to the life-altering nature of the injury. And SCIs may become climate jailed and forced to remain indoors for long periods of time due to weather extremes, which could lead to even greater morbidity from depressions in persons with SCI, which was pointed out by Mark-Ali Alexander previously. The two key components of climate action are mitigation and adaptation, and I'm going quick over this because they will be analyzed in the later on. So mitigation, ways of mitigation is public communication campaigns, patient education efforts, climate advocacy, inclusivity for those living with disabilities, and collaboration. And mitigation strategies for climate change and spinal cord injury are all these evidence-based actions in health and lifestyle, energy conservation, waste and supply chain, and advocacy and planning. Adaptation strategies for climate change, spinal cord injury, how we adjust our care to a changing climate, a climate resilient living with ways with heat management, power backups, water and sanitation, home environment, healthcare, and evacuation plans. And I finished with this nice survey published in 2019, which included 125 respondents, rehabilitation professionals over 6 continents, and almost 60% believe that climate and weather changes influence their SCI clients' health and well-being. Almost 60% reported that extreme heat spells had an impact on their clients' health. 75% reported that they had not taken action to educate patients, and 85% were interested in learning more about extreme weather and climate concerns for their clients with SCI, meaning that many scientists have an interest in this direction. So this was my final slide. I think now we can pass to the next speaker, Mark-Ali Alexander. Mark-Ali, please, can you please share your slides?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So good to see everyone. And I will now share my screen. And let's get this going. So good to see many old faces or young faces. Okay. Just get to the slideshow. It doesn't want me to. Here we go. I'm beginning. All right. Well, a lot has happened since I got involved in climate change wholeheartedly. And I thank you, Yanis, for asking me to speak, and I appreciate that everyone else is here. And I'm really happy to see that there is so much interest now, and there's about 40 people in the audience on this topic, because it really has been and will continue to be, a struggle to bring attention to climate change, and particularly climate change in SCI. And I'm so happy that there are okay, let's see if I can advance this now. I'm so happy that there are more papers out there, etc. But there's a lot of work that we still need to do. Back in 2019, 2020, I took a journey and I kind of left clinical practice and started working in climate change and disability. I really wanted to bring attention to spinal cord injury because I think people with spinal cord injuries, as in that article we published back in 2019, are like a bellwether for climate change. I think people with spinal cord injuries have more health impacts from climate change than potentially people with any other diagnosis. There may be a lot more information available about renal disease or heat strokes or the impacts on pediatrics, on the birth of and especially on infectious diseases. But people with spinal cord injuries have so many aspects of their lives that can be impacted. Back in 2019 or 2020, I started the Journal of Climate Change and Health. And one of our first editorials by the team, we developed this acronym, which is See Clear. And Yanis had the title of this talk, so I thought I needed to circle back and talk about See Clear and what that means and how we can all get involved. And not just we, but you in the audience. And on the right there, I want you to see, if you want to look at the QR code, please go to the website. My journey has taken me from doing a walk to starting the organization Sustain Our Abilities, which is where Yanis and Ingeborg and Carla and and Taslim and I met, to actually expanding more into an organization now called the Climate Health Society. Because I realized how important it is for those of us in spinal cord injury or rehabilitation or people that care about people living with disabilities to work in the greater audience. And that more than anything, we need to communicate about what's going on and really come out there and be leaders in this space. So CLEAR stands for communicators, climate leaders, educators, advocates, and researchers. And as we've traveled through the years, we've done a lot of everything. And I really appreciate that the people in this room are here, and I hope that all of you start thinking about this CLEAR as what you can do in climate change. Obviously, right now, it's not a good environment for people that are worried about climate change. I live in a country that I wish I could live with any or in any of your other countries right now, because I am, in fact, very devastated about what's going on with our country's leadership. Right now, we're communicating with each other, which is great. And right now, COP is going on in Brazil. We've gone to COP a couple times in the past, couldn't go this year, but it is really important that we all continue to communicate. So with the C, we're all communicating today about climate change. We should also talk about it to people in our communities, our patients, our family members, and communicating leads to being a climate leader and community. And Day for Tomorrow is something that many of us have done before and shared in our communities. This was an event we had in Philadelphia years ago. And we also had events in Africa. I see Amina that's on the phone has had, on the call, has had events. I know Ingeborg, Yanis has had events. And we've got to communicate to people what's going on in climate change. As part of Sustain Our Abilities, and I think many of you may actually be Sustain Our Abilities members, I hope you all are, we ended up eventually creating a book, which just was published this year, called Climate Change and Disability, A Collaborative Approach to a Sustainable Future for All. And as we think about spinal cord injury, I think we all should understand that people don't just have spinal cord injuries. They have other aspects to life, right? We all come to the plate having an area we live. We all have some type of sexual orientation. We all have some economic status. We may come from a lower middle income country. We may come from a wealthy country. We have a different background in that we may be employed, we may be unemployed. If we're in rehabilitation, we could be in different rehabilitation disciplines. And the other thing is, when we think about the issues of the disasters that Yanis brought up, where you live has some indication of what kind of disaster you're experiencing. So the overview that we started with in the beginning now needs to be expanded and to grow. And so this book and the journal is a part of that expansion. And I invite all of you really to follow the Journal of Climate Change and Health. It's a gold open access journal. So if you sign up for the notifications, you get free education. And we've had 275 articles submitted so far this year. So the breadth of information that you can obtain is really incredible. One of the things about the book, and I want to give a shout out here to Dr. Udine, who is from Bangladesh and such a leader. And Taslim actually provided this picture, which became the cover image for the book. And I don't know if he's going to speak about it. Hopefully he will. But this person here on a banana raft in a flood actually had a spinal cord injury. And so I think this brings attention to what our constituents, our patients, clients, whatever we call them in the area we work, are living with. And if you think about this gentleman here, what do you need when you have a spinal cord injury, right? You've got to deal with poikilothermia, the inability to tolerate temperatures, the inability to walk, maybe using a wheelchair. So medications, bladder, bowel care. So you can really see how this situation impacts people so much. So I'm going to promote the Climate Health Society now. And again, I hope, you become members, especially if you're a member of Sustain Our Abilities, because last year at Discuss, we were lucky we had a little funds. We were able to have a booth, and we do have about 500 people that are members of Sustain Our Abilities and can be free members of the Climate Health Society. The society is free for students. It's free for people from lower middle income countries. And for those that are from developed countries, the cost is $100 US, which is pretty low when it comes to society charges. Not as low as ISCOS, but compared to other ones, at least in our country, and I know other countries around the world, it is low. And we are trying to spread this education. We're spreading it through the journal, yes. I am personally stepping down as journal editor at the end of the month so I can devote my energies to the society. People that are society members, now the journal is the official journal of the society, so people get a discount in their APC. And we are going to have a meeting for all people interested in climate health adjacent to the big COP meeting next year. For those of you that aren't really in the climate change space, COP is decided the year before where the location will be. So the location next year will either be in Australia or in Turkey. And we're planning for either location with our friends and colleagues to work on getting this meeting going, which will also be hybrid. So the point is that when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about spinal cord injury, we're going through See Clear, right? We're communicators. We're climate leaders. We want to be educators. Being an educator means you know what's going on out there. And so it's not just one lecture about SCI, it's learning completely about what's going on in this field. Hybrid meetings are part of the solution, right? I'm so happy that ISCAS has adapted and is having these meetings. I hope that all their annual meetings become hybrid. Again, our physical location will be pending. And then the journal again. Please think about the journal. Start reading the articles. And also, we really need reviewers. This is a great way to advance your academic careers. And I know that Taslim also, he is a great publisher. He has an article in the journal on disability and LMICs. This is a shout out to our friends this was in actually Tanzania. And when we had a Day for Tomorrow event. It's not a picture from the wonderful event that Amina held in Nigeria. But again, I think the key here when we talk about climate change, and I'm worried about it now because of how badly the field has been affected by the U.S. current president and the people around the world that have followed, is that we do need to continue with our advocacy. And Day for Tomorrow was part of advocacy. And also, if we look at this picture here, this was actually at the World Trade Center. We know how the world changes. We know that there's been changeover in New York City about how things are. This was not the World Trade Center. It's called the Oculus, which came in on the property. But this woman was actually the director of FEMA in the United States until the administration changed. This man was a gentleman in charge of disability in New York City. He's now in charge of disability rights for Walmart. If anybody's ever heard of Walmart, And these were a couple of congressmen. And of course, that's me and that's my husband. So we've got to keep pushing forward. We've got to keep up our endurance and work together. On the research side of things, I do want to indicate here, I really think we have a long way to go. I've been lucky to really learn about research by getting involved in and launching the journal. But, one of the things that I find is very disappointing in ISCAS is that we're not on the annual meeting agenda. Every year we put in for courses, and every year our courses turn into posters. And, I think this topic needs to not just be a course, but to really be highlighted for once. We deserve to be on the agenda. This is the future, and it just can't be, curing spinal cord injury. Years ago, we did more than just work on curing spinal cord injury. And I think we've also got to think about one of the bottom issues there is about ethics of care and really taking care of people in LMICs. In terms of spinal cord injury, we need research on these areas we talk about, the plant-based diets, doing things sustainably, maybe braces that are out of sustainable materials, using catheters over or having catheters out of sustainable materials. Same thing with wheelchairs. We could actually make, if we think about it, wheelchair parts that are interchangeable, loaning things rather than purchasing things, and thinking about sustainable systems of healthcare. I think these are all important areas, and the more we can actually get climate change on the ISCAS overall agenda, the better we will all be. And again, I'm putting in our pitch here. I really would love to see you guys join the Climate Health Society. And if you are a member, you can get involved. We are going to have a Sustain Our Abilities Committee, which is focused on disability. And this is open. This is the way for individuals that are grassroots members to get involved. You don't have to be part of a big organization, a big university. Just if you care, we want you. And what about the next year? And this is ISCAS, and I've had a lot of fun with a lot of you throughout the years. And so I thought about what we need to do now, because C. Clear came back from years ago, and I was giving a talk recently at the American Public Health Association. And, there's a lot of distress going on in the field of climate change. I think there's a lot of solastalgia. Some of you may not know that term. It's a term for caring about and wanting the way the earth used to be. And there is a tremendous amount going on in the psychological aspects, new disorders being discussed, et cetera, more information on the renal issues, et cetera. But we also need bars. And I thought that would give some of you a chuckle. And what that acronym is now, I'm saying we need better adaptation, resilience, and solidarity. Why? Well, we always need to do things better, right? Life is one continuous quality improvement. We've got to really look for the future and try to make ourselves and the world a better place. And the world right now, in climate change, we talk about mitigation and adaptation. Well, we need more than just mitigation now, because what's happening now is really screwing us in the future. Things aren't going to get better. We've lost the 1.5 degree, target that they had from the Paris meeting. So we need adaptation. So we need to come up with ways where our patients, especially our patients with spinal cord injuries, but also ourselves, can adapt to living in a warmer world. And that may mean a lot of things. It may mean cooling vests, it may mean telehealth, it may be electric vehicles, it may be, learning more about how we deal with extreme heat or extreme cold. But we've got to get out there and start doing some research on it. And then we need to be resilient. It's pretty hard in my situation where I decided to change my life and focus on climate change, and to know so many people that just after years lose their jobs. We've got organizations in the US like USAID just being dropped. We've got NIH being decimated. We've got so many issues, and it's really important to work on resilience. Years ago, Klaus Gulting, who I see is on this call, and I did a course at both an Asia meeting and an ISCAS meeting, and it was on maintaining your passion in SCI. And this is also something that people in the climate change field need to do. Finally, I want to say one thing is we need to stay in solidarity. If people divide us, we lose. If we stay together as a team, we can win. So wherever we are and whatever we do, and for those of you that are listening to this, please, let's all work together and stay in solidarity. And on that, I'm going to stop speaking, and I'm available for any questions. And this is my email. Please feel free to write to me, and we'd love to, team up and work with you on this problem.
Mark-Ali, thank you so much. It was a wonderful presentation. You know that you have inspired a lot of us in this direction for climate action. I don't see right now any questions in the Q&A section. So if can you stay with us or you will leave?
I do have to go. I
Yeah.
apologize. I'm definitely happy to.
May I ask you one question, just one question? What are two things to do for SCI specialist? What are the first things they come up to your mind for SCI specialists can do in order to help persons with spinal cord injury regarding climate and health?
Well, I think the first thing is to talk and bring it up, right? Talk about disasters, talk about heat, and really have people with spinal cord injuries realize that this can be as dangerous to them as anything, right? If you go outside and you have a spinal cord injury, I really wonder about people that live in India when it's 115. How do people with spinal cord injuries get by? And that is something I wonder about. And then, the issue of the floods. If there is a flood, people with spinal cord injuries are going to be the ones that have the hardest time. So I think it's really important that we discuss these issues with our patients. We're all rushed, I think, in healthcare, no matter where we are, probably. We have less time to spend with people, but we can if we bring things up, we can start the conversation. And that has been done in other specialties, so there's no reason we can't do it too. Taslim has a question, it looks like.
Taslim. Yes, Taslim, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Oh.
Just shut off one of your devices.
Okay. Actually, it's a great presentation. It's a great presentation for our webinar. And SCOS has been a platform of physicians, therapists, social workers, and many other groups. So, any special suggestions for SCOS community or our members so that we can be sustainable and we can work for the adaptation of our SCI family members?
Again, I think the most important thing for ISCAS is to realize that this SIG exists. I do think it's really important that we get a position paper out there. There have been position papers out there for ISPRM and some of the different rehab organizations. I think the presidents have changed. I know there's administration issues, but I think it's very important that we get a position paper out on the topic. It's great that people are writing review articles out now, but a lot of these articles are just opinion pieces that are getting reviewed. And we need to move beyond opinions. We need the society behind us. We need the society to say this is an issue, and that will help get the providers out there. The more Yanis brings this group forward, and Ingeborg and Carla and you and the others involved, I think the more we will come up with for the constituents. And I would say, there's no magic to being the leader of something. A lot of times people that, some of your students, Taslim, may have great ideas. And I think that we're at the point where when young people reach out to us and we can grow those ideas, I think that's an important thing. All of, you and I are more of the senior people here, and we've got to really work to help the younger people take over and lead these things. So I think, it's all, when you're having your meetings, I know you're a great speaker and you're out there discussing it. I hate to see that we all go to these meetings for a couple days and spend all that carbon and that sort of thing. But, we're dealing with bigger societal issues, right? And so we've got to, I guess, in a lot of ways, educate people and make it part of spinal cord injury care. It should be part of, all the credentialing that people have. There should be a chapter in the spinal cord injury books about this. It should be on our agenda. If it's on other groups' agendas, why isn't it on ours? Why are the neurologists talking about it? That's how you learn about things. We know that Parkinson's is impacted. We know that stroke is impacted. We've got to take all these other issues and start dealing with them too. So it's a baby step thing, but we can do it. It's a step by step, right? We're a lot further than we have been.
Markali, thank you. While
Yeah.
you were talking, some questions came and some comments. I would like to discuss a little and ask you about it. So
Sure.
there is a comment. Lisa Scales, things are changing, but extremely slowly, and mainly due to patient requests rather than companies. Example, catheters made with recycled items. But that again, she says, is another issue, and that's correct, because we know that PMR specific emissions or waste at the moment, for example, healthcare rehabilitation probably generates a lot of waste due to its numerous procedures, lengthy inpatients rehab stays, and heavily reliance on disposable equipment like catheters, wound care supplies, and so on, which raises carbon dioxide emissions. I believe it is a correct comment. Would you like to say something more?
Absolutely. It is a correct comment. And I'm pushing the society, but I think this is a way to bring people together. I know a couple people in the rehabilitation field particularly interested in sustainability. I also took a course on sustainability from a company called 1.5. The issue is, yes, spinal cord injury is very resource intensive. The question is, how do you change that? And it's not likely. Now, some of the companies will say, and maybe somebody in this room can reach out and we can do a presentation and they would want to do it. But some of the countries do have a commitment to being, carbon neutral or promoting these things. On the other hand, that gets balanced with selling products, doesn't it? So we did have, when I was in charge of spinal cord series and cases, we had a point counterpoint on the topic of catheters. And so it gets back to, how do we bring this to the table and discuss this? We're not just going to change it unless it does come into the halls of ISCAS, unless it gets in the halls of other places. So I think that's what we're up against now. So it's harder than it was, but it is so important. I have to tell you a little story. The journal I started, we're accredited with all these different journal companies, and we got an impact factor, and our impact factor is like 3.6, and our site score is 7.9. So our impact factor is, higher than spinal cords, I think, right? But we applied for PubMed at the end of last year. And guess what? PubMed is run by the United States. In particular, it's under NIH, which is it's in the National Library of Medicine, which is in the National Institute of Health. And we still have not received a determination on the journal for PubMed accreditation.
Yeah.
So we've got to, do everything in every direction we can.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody, any other questions, Yanis?
Yes, I will read up right now. Serifa Hamoudi, considering infrastructure constraints, what innovative and sustainable strategies can ensure effective access to continuous professional development for medical staff in Africa? And how can the impact of these programs on the quality of care be measured?
Well, I think one of the issues for Africa that I've thought about for years is the Project ECHO group that in fact, we wanted to get this off of the ground, but we never really had the manpower. Project ECHO does telehealth education of people and has different topics. I think telehealth is a big, important thing for the continent of Africa. I also think that when you are working in Africa, what you may be able to do is you don't have the if you're working in just spinal cord injury in Africa, you don't have the negatives of climate change, right? Climate change is very negatively looked at, but you do have, people would be interested in just improving services in Africa. And I think there's a way to develop more volunteer programming and education programming, maybe not people on the ground, but maybe more volunteer programming. The other thing I would say is that if I was based in Africa, I would be looking more towards getting funding from organizations like Wellcome Trust, or if I was in Bangladesh, because these organizations really target LMICs. So that's kind of some of the thoughts I would have. But I would also say, talk to each other. I think there's a number of you on this call from Africa, and working together as a team is so important.
Yeah, right.
And I know that, Klaus has done a lot in Africa. I know Amina's here. I don't know whoever just asked that question. I think you should all collaborate too. And we'd love to collaborate with you.
There are some other questions from Africa. If we have time, we need to proceed now. If we have time at the end, we will continue with the questions. But thank you so much for being here today with us, Markali. And I would like now to proceed to the next speaker, who is Ingeborg Irgens, PMR physician, assistant professor from Norway. Inge, would you like to share your screen and start your presentation?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we up here? You can see it? Can you see my presentation?
Yes,
Yeah.
Inge, yes.
Okay, great. Yeah. I will talk about climate change and complications in spinal cord injury. And that is, we know that a spinal cord injury interrupts motor, sensory, and autonomic pathways, and impairing mobility and increasing heat storage, like during warm seasonal temperatures, due to the compromised autonomic control of both vasodilation and sweating, and also the recognition of body temperature. Let's see if I can. How do I change pages here? It won't change. Why?
Just push the button.
Yeah.
Did you share your whole screen, Inge?
Yeah, I think at my screen it's showing the whole. Oh, nothing is happening here. Okay, here. So now I found the button. And yeah, persons with, because of this, persons with spinal cord injury are more vulnerable to like hypothermia and its adverse effects. And however, information regarding how persons with spinal cord injury perceive warmer seasons and weather thermal discomfort during warmer seasons restricts routine activity still remains anecdotal. And we know that, like impaired autonomic nervous system, we will have, for people with the spinal cord injuries, especially those who have an injury above the T6, will have interrupted signals from hypothalamus, and that controls the body's response to both temperature and temperature changes. So if I now press at the right, that's great. So I will just go through this line I had at you at the previous slide here, because persons with spinal cord injury are unequally vulnerable to overheating during warm seasonal temperatures and heat waves. And as I said, because of the interrupted autonomic pathways that control sweating and blood flow below the lesion, there will be an affection. So heat dissipation is reduced and heat storage will increase, especially in people with a higher lesion and like tetraplegia. So clinically, this can present as a persistent high core temperature, dizziness, fatigue, tachycardia, impaired cognition, syncope, and in severe cases, heat stroke. So practically, overheating reduces comfort and daily function, like walking, transfers, self-care, and is commonly reported by people with spinal cord injury as having a greater negative impact on life during warm seasons than for peers with a non-spinal cord injury. So prevention and immediate management is important. People with spinal cord injury should prioritize avoidance and early cooling. They should use air condition during heat waves when possible, and when not available, use cooling vests, wet towels to limb and trunk, and use misting sprays and shaded outdoor routes. However, it's easy for me living in a developed country to say these things. It's not as easy for all people to manage this. We also have the impaired thermoregulation, because climate change-driven droughts and low indoor humidity increases skin dryness. And for people with spinal cord injury, skin is already vulnerable because of the sensory loss and altered microcirculation, and also the reduced ability to shift position, and all these are risk factors for pressure injury. Okay, and I also should say that poikilotomy, or a loss of normal internal temperature regulation, describes how body temperature can drift toward ambient temperature in people with high spinal cord injury. And again, due to the autonomic dysregulation, impaired sympathetic outflow, absent or reduced sweating, and altered peripheral vasomotor control means that these patients do not maintain the usual homeostatic responses to environmental temperature shifts. Or it's wrong to say patients, people are a much better word to use. And then we have burning and heat sources, wildfires, and also smoke, because climate change increases extreme heat episodes and wildfire frequency. So the wildfires create both direct burn hazards as well as indirect risks like smoke inhalation, reduced air quality, and disrupted services. So people with spinal cord injury face several intersecting vulnerabilities due to the sensory loss, which reduces awareness of localized heat or skin contact with hot surfaces, and further mobility limits that rapid will make them able to evacuate from hot zones, as well as respiratory comorbidities and exposure to smoke, which can be significant. So wildfires and extreme heat also threaten power supplies that run essential medical devices as well as cooling devices. And then we have the cold weather and hypothermia risk, which is much more common for us living up in the north. And cold exposure is also hazardous. Individuals with tetraplegia and high cervical lesions have blunted vasoconstriction and reduced shivering or muscular heat production, and this is mechanisms that normally protect against cooling. And as a result, they can feel uncomfortable, have reduced dexterity, impaired cognition, and show greater reduction in core temperature during mild cold exposure compared with controls. And even moderate outdoor cold or poor heated indoor environments can produce clinically relevant hypothermia in susceptible individuals. And cold can also worsen spasticity, pain, and complicate bladder and bowel routines. Yeah, and then we have the flooding and extreme precipitation and mobility barriers, because increased heavy precipitation events and flooding create immediate physical hazards and longer-term disruptions like loss of housing and interrupted care, damaged mobility equipment. So wheelchair users and people with spinal cord injury are disproportionately at risk during floods because of inaccessible evacuation routes, lack of aquatic capable wheelchairs, and interruptions to electricity for medical devices and pumps. Floodwater also increases exposure to pathogens and can contaminate skin wounds and pressure injuries, raising infection risks. So what to do then? After floods, damaged housing and long delays in repairs often make homes less suitable for return. Preparedness actions: map accessible evacuation options in advance and store essential supplies in waterproof containers at reachable heights. It's easy to just number these things up, but it's not so easy in real life. And so is the security of or insulate of electrical medical equipment, which should be kept with backup batteries and portable power. It's difficult for people to have all these things online. So I will just summarize the adaptation strategies that Yannis talked about in the beginning here. The ideal thing is that clinicians should document lesion levels, autonomic dysfunctions, equipment dependence, baseline skin status, and social supports, because this forms the basics of a seasonal or emergency plan, and also ensure adequate heating and cooling as well as backups. We should install accessible detectors, eliminate trip hazards, and store supplies and backups in accessible waterproof locations if possible. Oxygens should be registered. Ventilators and power-dependent devices with local utilizes emergency services. This should be maintained in spare cushions, battery and repair contacts. Further, maintain regular skin inspection schedules and also pre-identify accessible shelters and accessible transport, conduct drills with caregivers and prepare a grab-and-go kit, if possible, and also connect with local disability organization, if possible, to ensure caregivers and neighbors know how to help you, and push for inclusion of disabled voices in municipal disaster plans, which is difficult even in Norway. And also teach recognition of hypo and hyperthermia signs and steps for cooling and warming, steps for wound infection signs after flooding, and safe use of heating and cooling devices. And also promote accessible infrastructure. Prioritize power restoration for people dependent on medical devices and targeted public health messaging during extreme weather events. Like in Norway, we are more and more people are using sun electricity, but when we have winter and darkness 6 months of the year, it's not always easy to fill up these equipment so that we will have the needed power. So it's not easy and will not be easy, but we should do what we can to stay at least prepared on some levels. So stay prepared, and thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ingeborg, for this comprehensive presentation of all the health problems in spinal cord injured people regarding to climate. And we move forward to the next speaker, our next speaker, Carla Silva from the Southport Hospital in the UK. Carla, could you please share your screen? We will have all the questions at the end.
Hello. Can you see my shared screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. So, first of all, thank you for everyone for attending. I am summarizing on this presentation the role of healthcare system on climate change, what has been the management plan so far, and I'm going to highlight some of the actions we can take. So healthcare accounts for almost 5% of the total global greenhouse emissions. This may seem not much, but if it was considered a country, it would be rated as the 5th biggest emitter. So maybe we should remind ourselves of that. Some of you might have heard of the greenhouse gas protocol. So this is a framework for measuring and managing greenhouse gas emissions, and it is widely used by organizations globally, including the healthcare organizations, to support climate action and sustainability efforts. This framework identifies 3 scopes and pathways through which there is a contribution for climate change. So we have direct emissions, and that corresponds to scope 1, and involves things like the hospital fleet, like the cars and ambulances and so on. And then we have indirect emissions, which can be due to like subcontracts, as is the case of like purchased electricity. And we also have emissions secondary to the delivery of care itself, including drugs manufacturing, waste management, patients transport and traveling, and so on. So on the management of its impacts, healthcare needs to address things from all the way from reducing overall greenhouse gas to developing more green-friendly products, which is a big scope. This picture embodies and represents these 3 scopes of action, and it identifies also the decarbonization actions that we can put in place. So yes, if possible, we should consider redesigning our facilities and optimize the hospital fleet. But this, together with the electricity, accounts only for 29%. On the other side, we can also focus on the 71% of scope 3 through things like low carbon medicines and better waste management. So we can consider optimizing our procurement methods, like the way we buy things for the hospital. We can consider single-use versus circular economic model with better sustainability. Can consider the company or drug carbon footprint on the decision making, like when you're choosing a car on Uber, you have the option to go on an electrical car or you can go on a diesel car, and you can make that choice. And by the way, I have no financial interest on Uber, just as a disclose. So we can also choose drugs which packaging from the manufacturer also facilitates the daily individualized unit dose and automation, as this is known to be like the most effective stock management form because it highly reduces waste related to drugs. This picture is here like just as a representative of one of these procurement shifts. So the artist, Maria Kojic, has depicted herself like surrounded by all the equipment used at her own cancer surgery, one surgery. On the right, you can see the reduction that was possible after switching to a different surgical package. One might say, well, it's not that much, but we can see the difference, and this accumulated times as many theater interventions we have, it will make a difference. So this is just one example. One other aspect is so-called like low-value healthcare. So actually, some references say that up to 30% of healthcare provided can be wasteful, low value, or duplicative. So it is worth to think evidence-based medicine prescribing and diagnostics. So in the practical world, what exactly can you do on your clinical role? And well, these examples I'm bringing is just because these are some of the most commonly prescribed worldwide. So where the oral route is available for our patients, we can see that what difference it can make the switch between intravenous to oral route. If you look at paracetamol, this switch itself represents a 16-fold reduction. Same thing can be said in regards to antimicrobials. As an example, I brought here like amoxicillin and clavulanic acid, for which we have a 38-fold reduction. And when you think for how long our patients are on paracetamol and for how many courses of antibiotics they have, well, the earlier switch we made, what the biggest impact we can get in the end of this patient's this person's treatment. The monitoring bloods can also be another critical area to look at. We know that most carbon emissions are actually at the point of sample collection, mainly due to the consumables. And we know how difficult it is for spinal patients to bleed. So if we can plan monitoring bloods in a way that we can reduce the sample taking and also the transport associated with the sample, because sometimes your sample might actually be taken to a totally different location and need to be driven there. So if we can organize things in a way that we facilitate this and we streamline this, we obviously can get a better result and less emissions. Also, if you look at monitoring levels, just as another example, we should think, why are we taking the levels? Is it for safety? Is it for effectiveness? Also, depending on where you're practicing, do you have access to a pharmacokinetic department? Are you using a nomogram? For this particular person, am I looking at a one-off dose, like a gentamicin before a catheter change, or am I actually planning to stop treatment anyway? Will this result actually change my decision making? So, having worked in different countries, I'm aware that the protocols on how managing these things can be quite different. And obviously I have to say, well, follow your local protocol. But it is worth thinking, why are we proceeding in a certain way? The diagnostic images are also a big contributor, with the CT and MRI obviously like leading the list. So we should also be thinking a bit more thoroughly and more consciously and on how we request these diagnostic images. So as a take-home messages for my presentation, just as a summary. So healthcare is responsible for almost 5% of the global greenhouse gas. We can optimize procurement and stock management. We can reduce low-value healthcare. We can utilize evidence-based medicine and consider more often the intravenous to oral switch, bloods, and images diagnostics. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. I'm always enjoying your presentations. And we will proceed to the final presentation from Professor Taslim Uddin from Bangladesh. Professor Uddin, please, you can share your screen.
Thank you very much. It's late evening here. And do you hear me, please?
Yes, Taslim, please proceed.
Okay. So it's late evening here. I'm sure globally, good morning, good afternoon. So thank you very much. Already three speakers and Macaulay, they spoke on the issue. It's great that so my part has become easier. And as Carla mentioned, the people with disability, especially the person with spinal cord injury, they really contribute very little in global warming and the climate change, but they suffer hugely in the changing climate. So what actually we are getting in this station, because it's great to see the people in this room and the people are joining here in the agenda of climate change, disability, health issues, and especially persons with spinal cord injury. And we are here to find a way out or to find an adaptation of the persons with disability. They are impacted with the climate change. And in the Nepal earthquake 2015, we have seen about 200 persons with spinal cord injury, and when they have impacted because Nepal has a changing climate, and at this time, how this disaster affected the persons with changing climate. We have seen that. And during our last meetings with Asia-Oceania Society of Physical Rehabilitation Medicine, our International Society of Physical Rehabilitation Medicine, and of course, our national society meetings, we have seen a great number of people with huge interest. They are participating in this changing climate, how they are impacted with this, the impacting the person with disability, especially spinal cord injuries. And because the person with disability and climate vulnerability are mostly affecting in different regions of the world. So my topic is really, it is on the this changing globally disparities across LMICs and developed countries. So climate hazards are really intensifying global health and social inequalities. Individuals with SCI face heightened risks due to multiple risks, as our earlier speakers have mentioned clearly. And persons with disability experience significant higher mortality during natural disasters, especially in the low resource countries. And we need to be resilient, and we need to be talking on the issues. Change this one to yeah. So if we consider a publication with the World Bank, that person with disability face 4 times higher mortalities in natural disasters, and persons with SCI face multiple difficulties due to their sensitivity, due to sensory or mobility issues. And the climate events disrupt access to emergency care, to the medications, and to rehabilitation services, disrupting the electricity, water, the financial strain, and the limited transportations in different contexts, both in the developed or developing region. So if we see the natural disasters and the changing climates, from wildfire to hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, floods, and landslides, we have seen, as I have told about some of the earthquake problems that we have attended during Nepal earthquake 2015, and we had several landslides that follows mostly the floods in Bangladesh. Also, the how, because their persons are poor, they're they live in a poor housing, and so most of them on the hillsides of the country, and they suffer more. And people with aging here, as we have seen in Hurricane Katrina, more than 75 years age, they comprise half of all storm fatalities. This is an alarming issue, and we need to learn from these examples so that we can really work for the resilient in the future. See the mechanism for intensification of the inequalities, how these issues happening. There are 3 main issues. One is the differential exposure, increased sensitivity, and limited adaptive capacity. How the differential exposures are? It is because the vulnerable groups often live in areas more exposed to climate risk, as just I have mentioned in the landslides. even often located in floodplains, in urban heat islands, or with less green space, or near polluting facilities and highways, increasing their exposure to extreme heat, flooding, and air pollution. And the second point is the increased sensitivity. That is, their disadvantaged population, including the elderly, children, pregnant women, and those with the pre-existing medical conditions that they face with different conditions. And so the prevalent in deprived communities are more physiologically susceptible to climate change impacts like heat stroke, cardiovascular and respiratory illnesses, and infectious diseases. And then the third number is the limited adaptive capacity. This is because of, again, three issues: the financial constraints, access to services, and social and political factors. The financial constraints are mostly seen in the uh, uh, developing countries where uh, the they often lack savings. They don't have insurance coverage or the financial means to relocate, the improving housing insulation, or to purchase cooling systems or other adaptive measures. And access to services, that means they have limited access to healthcare. They have limited access to even early warning systems or essential services during a crisis that we have seen during even in pandemics. The social or political factors, that is mostly in the covering the developed and as well as the developing countries, because of the isolation, language barrier, and lack of political power can hinder their ability to advocate for their needs to access available support. So these are the factors important for hazards intensifying existing health and social issues. Other environmental vulnerabilities for persons with spinal cord injury are heat spread, infections, dehydration. Water contamination increases the risk of skin breakdown and pressure injuries. Power failure, that our earlier speakers have noted these issues, that intermedical routines, and equipment such as wheelchair, coupons, and all the ventilators degrade even in the extreme heat that we have seen in different publications. And one example is here how the environmental vulnerabilities cases. The Bangladesh heat waves inaccessible cooling centers, because the extreme heat in Bangladesh, evaluating cooling projects, this is situated in such a situation in such places. Uh, the people with disability cannot afford to go there, or they don't have any facilities to move from this place to that place. And even in the US or in Europe, because of the US wildfire smoke worsening respiratory complications that we have seen, and in Europe, there were deadly heat waves exacerbating health instability. So if multiple vulnerabilities increase the risk of health impacts for every person, the pregnant women or the person with disability and aging population, the poor or displaced. Bangladesh currently houses the largest number of refugees from our neighboring countries. So they are the displaced people. They are suffering hugely, and we are running a project over there. Hopefully, we will be able to publish the disability rates and their sufferings in the displaced populations. And of course, the children and the elderly also suffering at the vulnerable communities. Of course, the changing climate, when any sporting event going on, they are also vulnerable to uh, impact on climate changes. And of course, the poor people they work in outdoors, in agricultural workers, or our other manual workers. They are the environmental vulnerability cases. So, of course, there are the policy gaps and the climate action. Most of the LMICs emergency plans lack funding for disability accommodations. They just look for a general um, way. They don't care for the special need population. This is really important. And absence of evacuation protocols for wheelchair users and the marginalized populations. Lack of training for first responder on disability inclusive response. This is really important. And we need to talk on this, on the policy gaps, so that we can have a resilient uh, adaptation. Fragmented coordination between ministries handling with health and disaster management, because multiple stakeholders are there. Everybody is working, and if they do not work in a concert and in a one particular point, it is really fragmented. It remains fragmented, and it really does not work. So we need to talk on these issues. And again, inaccessible climate resilient infrastructures. This is really important because our donor countries, they they work on these resilient infrastructures, but that really remain inaccessible. Cyclone shelter, hospital, and raised roads often lack ramps or lift. So it's very difficult to get people accessible. And persons with spinal cord injury cannot reach 8 distribution centers after disasters. There is no way that that they can access to these 8 distribution sites. And there is no universal design is rarely applied in LMIC infrastructure projects. Most of the projects are okay from ADB or from other sources, so they just do on their own ways, because person with disability or person with working with the disability, they are not really consulted while doing all these things. We need to um, accommodate these people while making their policy. And of course, two other issues are food security and mental health. This is really important because these are the compound health impacts. Um uh, and heat-related illnesses, infectious and uh, foodborne diseases, mental health issues, disruption to health services. All these are the heightened anxiety related to evacuation challenges and caregiver shortages. Of course, these are the issues with loss of assistive devices increases psychological distress. While this 2024 Bangladesh flood we were attending as emergency medical team, we have seen one health loss. That is a great issue, that many of the elderly persons having multiple medications, they have lost their prescription. So while I was asking, okay, what are the current medications you are taking? Oh, doctor, I forgot. I have some 20 plus medications because of my diabetes, because of my hypertension, because of my heart issues. So I forgot, and I lost the prescription in the flood water. So it's a real health loss, and loss of other their mobility devices as well. So I will be uh, summarizing my talk soon. The other issues in this part, if not in the even other developed part of the world, the cultural stigmas and climate awareness is really a problem, because this leads to social exclusion during climate preparedness activities. And in South Asia part of the world, cultural norms affect who receives help first during disaster. There is no cultural issues. And persons with disabilities are often left out of early warning systems. stigma, reduces community support, and worsens post-disaster health outcomes. These are the issues. And personal disabilities and climate change in Nepal, humanitarian impacts and pathways for inclusive climate action. This is a good example of inclusive uh, 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 disaster resilience and response system. So I want to conclude here with the few words that we have seen with all the uh, presenters here, and I must thank ISCOS for arranging such a very important webinar. Thanks, participants, and of course, we need to go. We need to talk. We are to be communicative. We are to be leaders of climate change, health, disability, and sustainability. We need to be resilient because climate change amplifies disability, disparities for individuals with spinal cord injury. There are environmental risks that disrupt medical rootedness, that assistive devices, and basic safety. So the policy and infrastructure gap behind that safe evacuation and resilience, especially in the developing countries. And of course, that I have told is stigma and exclusion from preparedness systems was in post-disaster outcomes. And we need to build climate resilience, including planning, universal design, disability aware response, and strong cross sector coordination. Thank you very much. Thank you for kind attention.
Thank you, Taslim. Thank you. You may also go to the. Can you stop sharing, please? You may also go to the chat. There are some very useful comments. Amina Adu is making a very important comments regarding the backpacks, who are very important in case of an emergency for persons with disabilities and spinal cord injuries. You may read all the comments also in the chat. So while you are thinking regarding some questions, I need to go to find out the mentimeter we prepared previously, but I cannot see it. My screen is black. I don't know why. Do you have any questions? Please, you can write your questions in the chat. From the panelists, do you want to add something while we are preparing the mentimeter? Carla, would you like to add something? Ingeborg? Okay. Can you see the mentimeter?
Yes.
Okay, right. So, let's go. What can SCI specialists do about climate change? It's a cloud. You may write what you are thinking of. You may use the code or you to use the sign. I leave it for a couple of minutes. What can SCI specialists do about climate change? Barcode. You can use the barcode or you can use the code at menti.com. Educate and prepare, of course. That's correct. Preparations and educations are very important. We heard about it. Other ideas can be leaders or advocates, of course. SCI specialists must be leaders and advocates, as Mark Ali pointed out before. Education, again, yes. It's coming strong. Other ideas? Use evidence-based medicine. Evidence-based medicine, yes. However, we are lacking research in this direction. There are a lot. We need more research in the field. We need more research in the field. Other ideas? Do you have any other ideas? Educate and prepare. Communications can be climate leaders, advocates. Okay, let's wait a couple of minutes. Maybe some other ideas are coming. Please respond freely. Photograph gaps in access. That's new. Interesting. Photograph gaps in access. Okay. Okay, let's proceed to the next slide. Climate change preparation guidance for people with spinal cord injuries. Do you have any ideas? In the comments previously there were some solutions. Amina Du wrote some solutions regarding the participants. Only 8 participants joined Menti. You can join also with a barcode if you want, if you find it easier. No, wait questions. Just a moment. Guidelines for 3-day pack. Yes, 3-day pack is very important. What will be included in the 3-day pack? Medications, catheters, for some food, some water. Inform patients challenge. Inform patients challenge. Okay. Inform patients challenge. What is this? Sorry, I can't understand this. Ink applicability of Solu. What do you mean by that? Can you write it in the chat? Oh, acknowledge that they are. Okay, we can discuss this later. Okay. Give leaflets about climate. Oh, that's easy. A good idea. Let's go to the next slide. So the final slide is what is actually your specialty in order to understand who is joining this webinar. Please tell us our specialty. It's very important to understand who took part in this webinar. So till now we have PRM physicians and other. That means no PRM professional or other physicians. Okay, 50-50 now. Please continue to vote. Yeah, actually, PRM physicians, physiatrists can offer a lot because they can offer basic interventions and comprehend the physiological, mobility, and psychological elements that raise the risk. And also they can also advise patients about the elevated risk of, for example, cardiovascular disease and respiratory compromise in these situations. Something is in the chat. Okay, we have also nurses from the UK. So increase applicability of already available solution. Okay. Okay, and we have some other physicians. Okay. Great. So, from the panelists, would you like to add something from the remaining panelists? Because I cannot see Taslim anymore. So, I have only Carla and Ingeborg with me at the moment. So, would you like, girls, to say something to the audience?
Yeah, I can say something. First of all, thank you for attending this webinar, and thank you to you, Yanis, for organizing it. It's always a pleasure to participate with you. We saw in the mentimeter what you people think we should both be prepared of and how we should stay prepared. And I think that is something we should keep on working on. I like the idea with this 3 days kit, so easy to get hold of, and maybe that could be something important for people to survive for 3 days. So I think, and also I think education is super important, both for healthcare personnel, but also for people in general and for the politicians. They should know what people with disabilities are facing during the climate crisis and climate changes. So maybe that should be one of the jobs in the future for us.
Yeah.
Not only to inform
Agree.
people, but also the politicians. So thank you so much.
I agree, and I believe it will be also important to add maybe to know where to find these people, to help them, to have some kind of registries of these people, because there are no registries, at least in Greece. So it is also very important because in case of an emergency, of a disaster, these people need help. So we need to know where to find them. So Carla, would you like something to add?
Well, I think a lot has been said, and I think we have like lots of inspiring presentations and how to be a leader on this subject. On my part of, let's say, if I can add on, is remember that as we are all part of this system, although we do feel like we're a bit that we don't have maybe a lot of power to make the difference and to impose these changes, because most of them are at a more of a political level. There are little things that we can always like do on either because you're part of a committee, and you can always try to raise awareness for these things, and on little details on our own hospitals, on our own organizations, highlight that maybe sometimes there's a different way to look at things, and there's a different way how we can make things a bit more sustainable, a bit more like climate friendly. So I believe that we all have, regardless of either if you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, we all have our own role to play on it. So I think we need to be like a big team of leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. So we need to finish here. So I would like to thank all the attendants, but especially the panelists, the members of the government panel of the Special Interest Group of ISCOS of Climate and Health, Carla Silva, Ingeborg Ergers, Taslimuddin, Mark-Ali Alexander, all other members of the government panel. And thank you for attending this webinar tonight. So I would like to say good night from Athens and thank you so much for attending. Bye-bye. Thank you.